Kisna, I think you can start. People will join as per their own convenience, and this is also being live streamed on YouTube, so they'll get a recording anyways.
Done. I need to switch on camera, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be
one
great
second.
if you could.
Yeah, I can.
Sure.
Does this work?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Kisna. I'm from Bangalore. And my CLAT rank was 72, and I'll be going to analyze IU this year, and with college starting in a couple of weeks. So today, pretty much, we have critical reasoning marathon in terms of the questions, where we will be going through one section and then going through the answers for each of those questions and figuring out the entire strategies in terms of elimination. And also, while solving those questions and while we are deliberating the answers, you will also be able to get a slight insight on how exactly to analyze the mocks that you will be taking. Say you have a critical reasoning section and how to go about figuring out where you've gone wrong and also trying to correct those mistakes to the best of your abilities. Yeah. So, excuse me, I have a slight bit of a cough, so you'll have to bear with me with that. But before starting with the questions today, let's talk about the pattern change, which is a slightly significant change in terms of the questions, with your time, with the amount of time you're getting being the same, but the questions reduced to 120. Sorry.
8 बजे तक चलेगी 2 क्लास.
Anish, have you made me host? Can you just mute whoever is?
I'm making you the host, and I'm not allowing people to unmute themselves. Okay, that's fine.
Perfect.
They can raise their hands and then we'll unmute.
Done. Perfect. Works. Yeah. So with the pattern change, the thing is that there is no reason to panic for a lot of you who have been preparing for some time, because basically your core preparation strategy, your core preparation techniques do not change in the slightest. The sections are going to still remain the same. You still have those 5 sections. So preparation in itself is going to remain pretty much the same. The only difference that you will come to see is in your mock strategies, which now a lot of people will be able to play around with because of those extra 30 minutes. A huge thing that still remains a question mark is the length of these passages that you will be getting. So now that will have a huge effect on how much time you take per section and just the general approach you have to the paper. So say we have 2 options where in one of them, the length of the passages remain the same. Then that gives you an extra 30 minutes for all those questions. In that scenario, your accuracy becomes very, very important. I'm sure this is the conclusion that you can arrive at on your own too. But it is very important for you to attempt almost each and every question. Because when the paper had 120 questions and you had 150 minutes to solve it, most people used to anyway attempt, say most people in the top 100 ranks, 100, 200 ranks would attempt, say, about 130, 135 questions. So if most people are able to attempt 135 questions in the 120 minutes, then getting through all of the 120 questions will be more easier in the 120 minutes if the size of the passages remain the same. Now that's where math and GK come into play, because most people won't have the luxury of having a slightly weaker section, because you have only 120 questions and most people will be attempting most of those 120 questions. Your math and GK have to be on point. And honestly, this comes to play with logic also. Most people are quite better off at legal and English. So now it becomes extremely pertinent for everyone who's actually a serious aspirant to have a certain level in these 3 sections and to not dip below a certain average point, right? Because when the paper had 150 questions, it became much easier for people to kind of just be a little bit lax on one section and still make it up in another section, which was very, very strong for them. So now there is no luxury of that anymore. Like I said, math and GK becomes very, very important in terms of the fact that, okay, yeah, we'll get to that question. Kamlesh, just give me a second. I'll finish this small part of it. Yeah. So now math and GK becomes very important because your prep still remains the same. But those questions, I think, will come into play in terms of being the difference makers, because the reading sections are pretty much the same for everyone in the top rank of their ranks. Yeah, Kamlesh, I get that you're like Hindi, that your schooling has. Okay, wait, hold up. Anish, do you want me to address questions now or later on?
No. Address question in the last 10 minutes only.
Got
Otherwise,
it. Perfect.
it'll go haywire. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, then I'll be doing that. Okay, so now say that the passages get much longer than we expect them to. Then that throws a spanner in the works of everything that you have been anticipating, because then your entire mock strategy shifts. Because say the passages remain the same length, you also have a lot of leeway to play around with which sections you attempt. See, you can attempt as part of a section, then move to another section, then come back. It gives you that extra 30 minutes of leeway time to play around however you want. Say they increase the length of the passages to a huge extent, then that becomes even more difficult, because then focus comes into play, where your focus has to be really high while your reading speed has to be around the same, and your accuracy also has to be very high. So that becomes slightly more challenging in terms of getting used to the thing. Because see, you still have 6 months left to the exam. So over a period of 6 months, all of these things are things that can be developed to a large extent. It is very easily doable. It just needs consistent effort. So I think proper definitive mock strategies and figuring out how you're going to attempt the paper, your general approach to the paper, will come once the consortium gives you a little more insight on it, or organizations like NLTI coming out with other sample papers that will be able to guide you in a certain direction. Because the second you start doing those mocks, you'll be able to figure out, and any mentors or anyone else you will be speaking to, which includes NLTI, will be able to help you out a lot more with that in terms of mock strategies. Because with this change, mock strategies are going to be slightly more different for everyone, and you will be able to experiment with that and kind of figure out the right combination with those things. I think that's pretty much all I had to address with regards to the pattern change, because like we know, there isn't a lot of information available about it right now. So there isn't really much point, there isn't really a lot of points speculating about it to no end. It just makes more sense to arrive at definitive answers and solutions and strategies once you have more information. But in its basic essence, this is what you need to look out for in terms of accuracy being very, very important. Now, you can't afford to just leave questions on your 50-50s. Even when you can eliminate one option, you will have to pretty much take every question by the horns, unless you absolutely have no clue about it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And the entire elimination and figuring out how to attempt a question, even though you won't be 100% certain about it, plays into our session today with regards to going through the questions. So for today, we have 30 questions. We'll be giving you a time to solve 5 questions, and then be addressing the 5 questions. That's what we're doing, right, Anish? Give them time to solve one passage, and then go through the answers.
Yeah, even if we are not able to solve 30, even if, like, let's say we are also able to solve 15, that also works. Just to give them an idea how we want to go about it. Yeah.
Makes sense. So we'll start off. Anish, you'll be screen sharing, or do you want me to do?
No, you go ahead. I've enabled screen sharing by you.
Okay, done. Perfect. Okay, guys, just give me 1 second then. Okay, guys. So what I'll be doing is I'll be screen sharing one passage at a time. I'll give you, say, 4 minutes for the passage and 2 minutes for the questions. And if you want a slight change up in that from the next passage, just let me know. And honestly, even if you need a little more time for reading the passage, that's okay, because what you're focusing on today is elimination, arriving at the right answer. Your reading speed and things like that are things that you will have to build, but that's not something we can tackle in this. That's not something we can singularly tackle in this session. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Just give me a second. Yeah, you can see this, right?
Yeah, it's visible.
Done. Perfect. So now, okay, and you can read, right? It's legible. Whoever is in the call.
Just zoom a little bit. A little bit would be good. Yeah, this is fine.
It's fine. Okay, so at say 3 minutes, I'll scroll down a little more, and then yeah, you can figure it out, and then I'll move to the questions. Yeah, guys. So I'll be setting a timer on my phone, and I'll scroll down as per the necessity. Okay. You can start off.
Recording in progress.
Okay, guys, I think we've like gone through 6.5 minutes. If you all are fine with me starting. Yeah, okay, so we'll start with the analysis of the questions. Okay, so firstly, before we go to the questions, the main point of the passage was talking about cubism and the art movement basically, and how the and how the movement in itself goes against the traditionally established norm of the art movement having connections to the geographical location of the same place, right? Because now, with regards to cubism, they take the example of Pablo Picasso, who was Spanish, but who had the biggest influence in the movement of cubism. This is pretty much outlined in the second passage. I think in the Fourth line. Thus, the conundrum deepens, for it challenges the conventional precepts that dictate the tethering of artistic endeavors to the geographical womb that bore them. Because the Picasso and many other artists have their personal geographical background from other countries or from other cultures. But the entire Cubist movement was developed and nurtured in the environment of France. And it's still very possible for all of these people to have entered this other environment and still had a huge impact on that movement. So that is pretty much the entire idea of the passage. Okay. Moving to the questions. The first question is an assumption-based question, where it asks what underlying assumption is most likely embedded within the author's portrayal of the Cubist luminaries' geographical locations in relation to the propagation of their art movement. Option A is the physical location of an artist is a secondary fact to the intrinsic creative abilities that dictate the production of their artwork. This is pretty much what goes according to the passage. Option B is the artistic influence of a region is diminished when its proponents originate from a variety of localities. Now, this goes directly contradictory to what the passage is saying, because it says that the artistic influence of a region is diminished when its proponents originate from a variety of localities. You can't say it is diminished, because the entire passage talks about how these people from different localities, from other regions, have come and completely enhanced the entire movement, right? So that is how we can eliminate option B. Option C says Cubist artists primarily chose to migrate to France due to its vibrant artistic culture and historical precedents. Now, this is not mentioned in the passage at all. The vibrant artistic culture and historical precedents present in France is something that is not even close to addressed in the passage. They only say that within the creative nexus of France. That just means the creative environment in France. That has no relation to any historical precedents or any historical events that may have strengthened the said cultural environment there, right? So that is how we can eliminate C2. D is Picasso's contributions to Cubism were mainly due to his Spanish heritage rather than his eventual connection to France. Again, this doesn't directly flow from the passage, because the Spanish heritage part is not the reason for him being creatively successful. It is the fact that despite having Spanish backgrounds, he has moved to France and had a huge effect in this very, very French movement, or a movement that pretty much centered around France. Correct. So that is why we can eliminate this option too. Now, option A, the physical location of an artist is a secondary fact to the intrinsic creative abilities that dictate the production of their artwork. This isn't directly stated in the passage, but the question is an assumption question. So it is something that is intrinsic for the rest of the passage to be true. It is extremely necessary that this remains a fact, that this is true for the rest of the passage to follow. So now say that we would reverse this. The physical location of an artist is primary to the fact is primary as compared to the intrinsic creative abilities. So what that would mean is that the place where the artist is from takes higher precedence as compared to his creative abilities. Now that goes exactly against what the passage is saying, right? So that means that the original statement that the physical location of an artist is secondary to the fact as compared to his creative capabilities has to hold true for the rest of the passage to follow. So that is why we go with option A in this case. Now, before we move into the other questions, a brief thing about elimination. Elimination is something where you have to build your own kind of strategy, your own system for it. Correct. But there are some very easy ways where you can eliminate the most outrageous options, if I can call them that, because a lot of these options across mocks from different centers, even in your CLAT paper, and from wherever from whichever source you get your questions, will follow a similar pattern where there will be some options that will be extreme, where it is taking something what is said in the passage and inflating that to a level that is just not backed up by the passage. Right. So it will take a small thing that is hinted in the passage and make a big deal out of it and completely take it out of its limits. Right. Where they will say that okay, so say that we will be encountering examples for that even in this passage. I noticed some options that do that. So that is one where the option is too extreme for the passage. where it takes something that is hinted in the passage, but takes it to a completely different level that just it cannot be backed up by the passage and is simply not true. The other one is an option being alien, where it just isn't addressed in the passage. It may not have directly been contradicted by the passage, but it just doesn't. But the fact that it just isn't directly addressed in the passage, it might be a side thing or something that is associated with what the passage is saying, but it isn't directly addressed in the passage. Now, both of these options can't be a part of your answers, or you can use them as a part, as a system with which you can go about your own process of elimination. Now, the other thing is a direct contradiction, where the passage says X and the option says completely the opposite of X. Right. So now these are your three basic ways in which you can eliminate, but you will also find as you go about the process of elimination, you will find specific options that may follow a certain pattern that you've already seen, and you'll develop your own process. So with regards to elimination, it is very, very important for you to develop your own process, and that only comes with practice. There is honestly no other second alternative to that. Yeah. So now the second question is, which of the following, if true, would most strengthen the author's arguments about the independent, self-contained, creative universe of the cubist artist? Now, this is a slightly challenging question in the fact that option A can be very easily eliminated, because it says the diverse geographic origins of cubist artists have a direct correlation with the varied artistic styles within the movement. Now, it isn't the passage doesn't in any way say that it is because of their diversity that they have obtained that creative ability, and that is what has led to the movement. It doesn't say that at all. Like I said in the previous option, it is the fact that despite the fact that they come from these varied localities, they are still having an impact. And the option A also says the diverse geographic locations. Now, they haven't told us that they are from many, many different places. They've given us a couple of examples, right? And they all are still centered around Europe. So the word diverse here is slightly extreme in my opinion, and that is why I could eliminate option A. Now coming to option B and C, which I thought was slightly closer, we'll come back to that. Option D says a recent survey found that the most contemporary artists do not believe that geographic location significantly impacts the artistic style or output. Now, this question is slightly more tricky to eliminate, because at first glance, it may seem like something that would support broadly what the passage is saying. But if you go back to the question, right, if true, which would most strengthen the author's argument about the independent, self-contained creative universes of the cubist artists? The question is specifically talking about the creative universe, not of just their geographical location. So they so certain artists may be from a specific geographical location, but that may not be the creative universe under which he's practiced his skill or enhanced his skill. So we are not talking about artistic style or output here. They're talking about the self-contained creative universe, with which there is a subtle difference present there. So that is pretty much why you can eliminate option D. Between option B and C, B says many cubist artists credited their non-French backgrounds as a significant influence on the unique interpretations of cubism. Now, like I said, okay, yeah. So then option C is the majority of cubist artists had extensive travel experiences that broadened their artistic perspectives before settling in France. Now, this is slightly close. This is something that I did consider for the answer, but travel experiences is a little bit too vague in terms of contributing to their artistic perspective before settling in France. And also, option B is slightly better in the fact that it says many cubist artists credited their non-French backgrounds as a significant influence on their unique interpretations of cubism. So now the passage also hinged to the fact that because they are from these other geographical locations, there are parts of their creative styles that have been influenced by those geographical regions and the culture within which these artists have practiced their skill, and that has really had the entire French Revolution kind of propel itself forward, right? So because option C is slightly more vague, option B would be the correct answer here, although option B and C are quite close in my estimation. Now, with option, now moving to question 3. Question 3 says, which of the following, if true, would most undermine the author's argument regarding the irrelevance of geographic constraints in the creation of cubist art? Now, with most questions, please be careful as to the question itself, as to what you're reading, because here they ask, if true, which would most undermine, which is opposite to the previous two questions, which were more. The first question was assumption. The second one was which would support the passage. Now missing that word undermine would completely change your answer. So be careful about that. Okay, I'll start with option B here. The French culture has a rich history of contributing substantially to the emergence of revolutionary artistic movements. So now again, the part of rich history is very alien to, to the entire passage. The entire history of French culture isn't really addressed in the passage. And although this can be, this has the potential to undermine the author's argument because it is alien to the passage. Because
Kisna,
it
I'm
is
sorry to interrupt, but I think you need to scroll down a little bit.
Oh, scroll down. Yes, my bad. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah. So now, because the history because the history isn't mentioned in the passage, it automatically becomes alien, and that is why that cannot be your answer. This option C is Cubist artists who moved to France often incorporated elements of French culture into their artwork. Again, this is something that isn't addressed in the passage. They probably may have done this, but again, it doesn't relate to the author's argument regarding the irrelevance of geographical constraints in the creation of Cubist art, because this doesn't really tie into the fact that they are from different geographical constraints, and that has helped to pretty much propel the movement, right? So even option C is alien to the passage. Option D, the French government provided significant funding and support for artists, leading to the blooming of Cubist art in France. Now, the entire monetary part of this argument isn't addressed again, which is also alien. So the only option you are left with is option A, which is several Cubist artists expressed a strong connection between their artistic output and their experiences within the artistic circles in France. Now, if this were to be the case, then it will be very difficult for artists from different geographical locations to come to France and actually make a difference in the Cubist movement, right? So this very clearly undermines the author's argument with regards to irrelevance of geographical constraints in the creation of Cubist art. So that is why here option A is pretty much the right answer by all means. It's very easy to eliminate the other three options. Moving to question 4. Which of the following can be inferred from the author's argument about Picasso's role in the Cubist movement? This was a slightly easier question. Option A says Picasso's unique approach to Cubism was largely shaped by his Spanish heritage. This is, again, something that is probably true, but the bar for inference is very high, where it has to very directly flow from the passage. It is something deductive in nature. Deductive means that it is something that you can arrive at by looking at what the passage has said. So say the passage is, the entire passage has a couple of premises on which the entire argument is based, right? The inference has to directly flow from those things. Now, we cannot say that Picasso's unique approach to Cubism was largely shaped by Spanish heritage. It may have been slightly, to some extent, shaped by Spanish heritage, but the word largely here is problematic. It is extreme, and that is why we can eliminate option A. Option B, Picasso's geographic move to France was essential to his development and propagation of Cubist art. Now, the problematic word here is again essential, and the fact that the entire the geographical connection part is the main point that the passage is trying to destabilize. The fact that they have mentioned that it was very essential to his development is also something we cannot infer, because here it talks about only Picasso's role in the Cubist movement. So essential is again slightly extreme to this. See, again, both option A and B are maybe true, are probably true, but strictly with the context of the passage, they are extreme. And also there are better options around. Option C, Picasso's contribution to Cubism significantly transcended the norms of artistic expression of his time. This is the one that follows, in my opinion, because there is nothing really that is extreme, alien, or contradictory to the passage. All of this is pretty much stated in the passage. It is hinted at the passage, and that is what we can infer from the passage very directly. Option D is Picasso's influence on Cubism was marginal compared to the other artists due to his Spanish origins. Again, this is very, very directly contradictory, and that is why we can eliminate this option. This was a slightly easier question in terms of the other three. But yeah, moving to the last question in the passage, which is what is the main point the author is attempting to convey regarding the relationship between the geographical origin of artists and their artistic movements. Now, just dissect this question because they are asking what is the main point. A lot of you would have encountered main point questions in your practice, and it is very important to identify that because sometimes the passage may have multiple points, but identifying the main point can be slightly tricky. Right. So in this case, option A says the geographical origin of artists should be credited for the emergence and propagation of artistic movements. One second. The geographic origin of artists should be credited for the emergence and propagation of artistic movements. Again, this isn't the main point. It is a slightly extreme point in the fact that they are attributing the propagation of artistic movements in general to the geographical origin of artists, which is wrong. Because number one, the passage doesn't talk about that. It isn't the main point. And also, yeah, the passage deals specifically with Cubism, and that doesn't extend to all artistic movements in general. So I think that's why we can eliminate option A. Option B says that Cubism, despite its French roots, attracted artists from different locales due to its revolutionary nature. Again, revolutionary here is problematic, and also this isn't what is mainly addressed in the passage. Like I said, the main address of the passage is with regards to the irrelevance of the geographic or location or the geographic background of these artists to the actual movement itself. Option C is the emergence and growth of Cubism were driven by artists who defied the geographical constraints of artistic creation. Now, this looks quite likely, but we'll go to option D first. Picasso and his contemporaries were pivotal to the international spread of Cubism despite their diverse origins. Now, international spread of Cubism is also problematic here. It is slightly extreme. It hasn't completely been addressed in the passage, so it can't be the main point then. Option C says that the emergence and growth of Cubism were driven by artists who defied the geographical constraints of artistic creation. Now, what are the geographical constraints of artistic creation? That is the fact that wherever you are born, wherever you are from, wherever your background is, your artistic capabilities or your creative nature has that limit of those geographical boundaries of the place you are from. Now, all of these artists are people who have moved from these other countries to France or have pretty much contributed to the Cubist movement, which was based in France. Now, yes, so all of these artists are defying these geographical constraints and are then aiding to the emergence and growth of Cubism. So this is very directly the main point of the passage, and it is exactly what it is addressing. So that is the deal with question 5. Option C is the answer here. Okay. Now we'll move to the second passage. I know I'm taking like a significant amount of time with each passage, but like Ani said, we don't have to go through 30 questions. Even 2-3 passages will give you a decently significant idea as to what we are going about and what we are trying to do here, instilling that culture of elimination and helping you build your own process. So yeah, I'll give you 6 minutes for the next passage too, which is to do with a little bit of science. So yeah. Well, guys, I hope you're done with solving the questions. We'll just briefly talk about the passage first. Okay? Now, the passage had a couple of major points, where the first one is in the first paragraph itself, where they say that molecules are the building blocks of life's majestic tapestry, of life's majestic tapestry. Now, and what forms the molecules? That is the basic atomic structure, which is what they've also explained in reasonable detail, right? Then they talk about how quantum mechanics and the principles of quantum mechanics defies the conventional notions of multiple things, and they specify that the wave particle duality of particles defies conventional notions, and the uncertainty principle also defy these other conventional notions. So now with that basic with those basic points in mind and the rest of the passage, let's move to the questions. That is, the first one is question 6. In assessing the validity of the author's argument about electrons' ability to transition between the energy levels and its relation to the phenomena of light, it would be most beneficial to determine which of the following. Now, this comes at the end of the second paragraph, I think, where the electron's ability to leap between energy levels, transitioning from one orbital to another, bestows upon matter its capacity to absorb and emit light. Now, if we look at option A, the percentage of energy transitions of electrons that result in the absorption or emission of light. Now, this is, for me, this was a close option to the actual answer. Option B is the variety of energy levels that electrons can occupy within an atom. Now, the variety of energy levels that an electrons can occupy within an atom wouldn't really help us in understanding how or why they are emitting or absorbing a certain amount of light. So this wouldn't really be useful. That's why you can eliminate B. Now going directly to option D, the frequency of energy transitions experienced by an average electron. Now again, the frequency experienced by an average electron wouldn't really give us a perfect picture, because then we have to assume that there exists only one electron within an atom. But here we are not aware of that, and understanding just the average frequency of a single electron wouldn't give us a clear picture of all the electrons and their energy transitions, which is why we can eliminate option D too. Now the options are between A and C. C says that the process by which electrons shift from higher to lower energy states. When I was solving this, I was very conflicted between A and C. I think C is also flawed in a certain sense, because it says shift from only higher to lower energy states. It specifies the higher to lower energy states, whereas the question itself, whereas the passage itself talks about transitioning from one orbital to another in general, and option C ignores the energy transitions between, say, lower to higher energy states, which may also have an impact, which we aren't aware of. But option A says the percentage of of energy transitions of electrons that result in the absorption or emission of light. This also is slightly vague in nature and won't give us a perfect idea or a perfect answer in terms of the absorption or the absorption or emission of light. Which is why this is slightly tough question. The answer key says option C, but yeah, this is a tough question, and you will be getting these questions in your mocks and the paper also. Even in our CLAT paper, there were a lot of these slightly contentious questions where you can eliminate 2 options, but you have 2 other options. In this instance, please don't leave such questions, because if you can eliminate option B and D, you have a 50% chance of getting it right. So please go for it in those scenarios. Yeah, and yeah, that's about it. In my personal opinion, in this case, the answer could be both A and C. Both are flawed, but I get why the answer key says C, because it can be perceived as slightly less flawed than option A. And honestly, this concept applies to critical reasoning as a whole. The entire idea is not to choose the right answer. It is to choose the best answer. Whereas of your 4 options, 2 options may be completely wrong. One may be slightly wrong. The other may be little less slightly wrong. So you have to basically choose your least wrong option or your best option. And so basically your least wrong option ends up becoming your best option. If you go hunting for the perfect right option, then you'll end up getting nowhere, because you'll spend too much time thinking about the flaws in the option that might as well be right because it is the best option available to you. That is why the entire concept and system of elimination is that important, because it gives you a nice shortcut to choosing the least wrong option. Okay, so that should be your ideology and that should be your approach while going through the critical reasoning section. Now, question 7. Which of the following, if true, would most enhance the author's contention that understanding atomic and molecular interactions unravels the mysteries of the universe? Now, advances in quantum mechanics have facilitated a more in-depth understanding of subatomic particles and their interactions. B, comprehension of atomic structures has contributed to groundbreaking discoveries in fields unrelated to physics. Now, fields unrelated to physics is very vague because we do not know what these fields are. And thus, we cannot say whether it is actually addressed in the passage or actually flows from the passage. So whether it helps in groundbreaking discoveries in fields unrelated to physics is quite immaterial to us, because here we are very, very clearly talking about physics and much more in a slightly more abstract sense, the mysteries of the universe. So the question very specifically says interactions which unravel the mysteries of the universe. Now, do we know that these fields that are unrelated to physics actually unravel the mysteries of the universe, or whether these fields actually encompass the mysteries of the universe? Since we aren't aware of that, we can eliminate option B. Option C says observations of cosmic phenomena have often confirmed theories based on atomic and molecular interactions. Now, the problematic part here is cosmic phenomena. What is cosmic? It talks about space, right? The entire passage doesn't even go in that direction. It completely strays away from that territory. So cosmic phenomena is completely alien. So that is why we can eliminate option C also. Option D says interdisciplinary studies involving physics, chemistry, and biology rely heavily on the knowledge of atomic and molecular interactions. Now, coming back to the same reason which we eliminated B, which was in B, we did not know these fields unrelated to physics played a part in the mysteries of the universe. Here also chemistry and biology are alien. We do not know if they directly tie into these mysteries of the universe. Now, while all these various subjects, and this applies to option C also, even cosmic phenomena, they do follow under the brief region of science, right? But that is why extremely careful and deep reading of your options is important here, because you will spot these small things that stray slightly away from the passage, and which is why it becomes extremely easy to eliminate these. Now, the second you figure out that system and exactly how to do that over a longer period of time, it becomes much easier to arrive at a specific, proper, correct answer. So, here, going back to option A, option A says advances in quantum mechanics have facilitated a more in-depth understanding of subatomic particles and their interactions. This is exactly what the passage is talking about, where quantum mechanics plays a direct part in the in-depth understanding of everything else that they're talking about, specifically molecular structures and subatomic particles, which with a larger scope pretty much leads to the unraveling of the mysteries of the universe, right? So option A is the only one that follows. Everything else can be comfortably eliminated. Just give me 1 second. Let me go. Yeah, coming to question 8. Which of the following, if true, would most undermine the author's argument that the pursuit of scientific knowledge allows us to decipher the symphony of atoms and molecules? Which of the following, if true, would most undermine the author's argument that the pursuit of scientific knowledge allows us to decipher the symphony of atoms and molecules? Keep in mind that the question says undermine. Going to option A, several significant discoveries in the field of quantum mechanics have been made through mathematical modeling and abstract thought rather than through direct observation. Now, the author's argument is that an attitude of scientific discovery or scientific inquiry will lead to people figuring out the answers or unravel these mysteries of the universe, right? So how can we say here in option A that mathematical modeling does not fall under that scientific inquiry? So because of the fact that we cannot say that, I think we can eliminate option A because it goes too specific with regards to mathematical modeling and abstract thought. We do not know whether these concepts fall under the general theme of scientific inquiry or not. That is why it doesn't necessarily directly undermine the author's argument. Option B says, despite advances in technology, certain aspects of atomic and molecular interactions remain elusive and poorly understood. We'll come back to option B and even to option C. Option C says many scientific discoveries have been the result of serendipity or chance rather than rigorous scientific investigation. Option D says a theory of quantum mechanics, while successful at explaining subatomic phenomena, often contradicts classical physical theories. One second. Okay, so here I think with option D, they're trying to tie into the fact that some of the theories of quantum mechanics challenge the conventional norms. Now, challenging conventional norms doesn't really mean contradict. It's not the same thing. That is why we can eliminate this option too. And also, it doesn't directly relate to the author's argument about the pursuit of scientific knowledge and the deciphering the symphony of atoms and molecules. The contradiction of the classical physical theories does not play into this question at all. So now there are options are between A, B, and C. But now B says, despite advances in technology, certain aspects of atomic and molecular interactions remain elusive and poorly understood. Now, this would directly undermine the author's argument because the author's argument is that scientific inquiry, scientific inquiry, and scientific discovery would directly lead to solving these vast problems, right? And option B is saying that despite these advances in technology, despite using this entire attitude of scientific inquiry, this is something that they are not able to achieve. So B directly undermines. Even C to an extent undermines, where it says that yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we are unable to see the 8th question.
Oh, 8th question. Yes, my bad. Okay, guys, in case I forget, no, just unmute and let me know. But yeah, only for that. Please don't unmute for any other reason. My bad. Sorry, guys. But I'm pretty sure you could make sense of it, right? Do you want me to repeat it? You could just enter it in chat. I will do that. Sorry. I didn't have the chat open. My bad. I'll keep the chat open. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so now that you can see question 8, I'll just repeat it quickly, okay? My bad. Option A says that, okay, so basically option A had this had this phrase called mathematical modeling and abstract thought, while the question specifically talks about the pursuit of scientific knowledge. Now, we cannot conclusively say that mathematical modeling and abstract thought do not fall under this approach of scientific inquiry and scientific knowledge, which is why it doesn't directly undermine the passage and the author's argument, because mathematical modeling might just fall under the process that relates to scientific inquiry. That is why you can eliminate option A. You can eliminate option D because it doesn't relate to the question. Option D talks about the contradiction of classical physical theories with regards to the theory of quantum mechanics, while the question talks about deciphering the symphony of atoms and molecules through the process of scientific knowledge and scientific inquiry. So option D doesn't directly relate to the question. Option B and C are close. Option B directly contradicts the passage because it says that despite the usage of technological advancements, of the attitude of scientific inquiry, there are certain sections of atomic and molecular interactions which still remain elusive and poorly understood. So now that directly contradicts what the question is saying and the main argument of that the author is using in this case. Option C is also close because it does say many scientific discoveries have been a result of serendipity or chance rather than rigorous scientific investigations. Now, the reason you can't choose C here and why it isn't the right answer is that serendipity and chance are slightly vague, and more than that, rigorous scientific investigation. Do we know that someone needs very rigorous scientific investigation to arrive at these answers? No, right? So this remains again slightly vague and alien. So that is why you can eliminate option C also. Here B is the right answer. Going to question 9. Based on the information in the passage, which of the following can be inferred about the principles of quantum mechanics? Option A is quantum mechanics undermines conventional scientific principles by introducing concepts such as wave-particle duality and uncertainty principles. At first glance, this is an inference, but the word undermines here is wrong. I also addressed this in the previous question, where the passage says it challenges the conventional norms. Challenging and undermining are two completely different things. Undermining has a much higher bar, right? So since the passage says that very directly challenges and they're giving you a direct metric for this, undermines the usage of the word undermine here makes the option wrong, and that's why you can eliminate it. And because this is an inference question, the bar for it directly flowing from the passage is very high. Now, option B is okay. We'll come to option B later. It is the right answer, but we'll address the elimination of option C and D first. Option C says that quantum mechanics, with its intricate principles, encapsulates the entirety of the natural phenomena witnessed in the universe. Firstly, the passage doesn't make a distinction between natural phenomena and other phenomena, and also more importantly, the usage of the word entirety here makes it exclude. So now this also this applies to just CR in general. Usage of the words all, entirety, none, all of these things are very extreme. They are completely excluding any other possibilities. So when these words make an appearance that are very conclusive, then in that case, you have to be slightly more careful and then make an informed decision based on that. So that is why you can eliminate option C. Option D says that quantum mechanics explores the subatomic realm and its phenomena in isolation from the macroscopic world. Isolation from the macroscopic world is also alien to the passage. They do not talk about isolation in any means. That is why option B is the right answer. Now, the study of quantum mechanics has contributed significantly to our understanding of atomic and molecular structures. This can be very directly taken from the passage, because the part of the passage talks about the subatomic particles and that they being the basis of molecular structure, and in turn molecular structure being the basis for just how the world functions in general. So quantum mechanics has, the principles of quantum mechanics, using quantum mechanics for research, has contributed significantly to understanding these atomic and molecular structures is an inference that follows very directly from the passage, which makes it completely right. Coming to question 10. 1 minute, I'll scroll. Which of the following is an assumption underlying the author's argument? The author's argument that the symphony of atoms and molecules composes the vast tapestry of existence. This is an assumption. Since this is an assumption question, the option has to necessarily be true for the rest of the passage and the conclusion and the other premises to follow, right? Starting off with option A, subatomic particles and their interactions are representative of larger universal processes and structures. Now, this is the right answer, and it has to be the assumption in this case, because do you remember in the start of the passage, they said that subatomic particles form the basis of molecular structure, and I'll just pull up the exact wording that was used here. 1 second. And they say that they're the building blocks of life's majestic tapestry, right? Now, if these subatomic particles aren't representative of molecular structures, then the entire argument of molecular structures being the basis for life's tapestry doesn't make sense anymore, right? Because if you can't make that correlation, if they aren't representative, then they by itself cannot be the building blocks of life in general. Which is why A has to be the assumption here. If A were to be untrue, then the rest of the passage would fall apart. Option B says that the scientific method, with its focus on observation and inquiry, is sufficient to comprehend the complexities of atomic and molecular interaction. Okay, so now in the passage, firstly, this is alien to the question. The question is asking about the author's underlying argument that the symphony of atoms and molecules composes the vast tapestry of existence. Well, this is talking about the complexities of the atomic method and the observation and inquiry of the same, which is very different to the structure itself, which the question is talking about. And option B also says the scientific method with its focus on observation and inquiry is sufficient. Now, the passage never says it is sufficient. The passage says the scientific method or scientific inquiry will help, or that is the ideal path. It doesn't say it is the only path or it is the only thing that is needed for understanding more about just particle nature in general. That's why you can eliminate option B. Option C is that the understanding of atomic and molecular behavior is integral to making sense of the natural phenomena of the universe. Again, this doesn't relate to the question itself, so that's why you can eliminate it. And also the fact of it being integral is slightly extreme. It isn't completely hinted in the passage, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an assumption. It may not be integral, but it can still play a huge part in it. Okay. Now, option D is the existence of life itself is dependent on the dynamic interplay and elemental interactions of atoms and molecules. The existence of life is different from the building blocks of life's tapestry. Existence of life is much more general. It's talking about life in general as a person's life. That's what existence of life here implies, and that is again not related to what the passage is saying. The passage is talking about the building blocks of life, and existence of life is not exactly the same as that. Yeah, so that is why you can eliminate option B also. This passage was relatively more tricky because it went into the nitty-gritty of word meanings and just replacing singular words and expecting you guys to identify the same, which is why it was very clearly more tricky in that sense. So that's why it's really important to be aware of these small things and make very subtle distinctions between what the passage is exactly saying and then what the options are hinting. We'll move to the next passage, but before that, Anish, we have time for one more, right? One more passage. Anish, if you're here, can you just let me know? Okay, it's fine. We just move on to the next passage. Yeah, guys. So I'll be giving you 6 minutes for this passage too. I'm very straining my voice right now. So I hope you all can understand and comprehend me well. But yeah, I'll give you 6 minutes for this passage too in total. And yeah, we can start now. Guys, I think that's the end of the time for this passage. We'll go through the questions quickly. Uh, the main point of the passage was just presenting. Initially, there was a small part about environmental things, and then what, and then what the author goes on to do is just present a series of solutions to combat these problems that just range from customization of farm equipment and research collaborations, etc. Right. So now question 11 says, which of the following situations best applies the principle expressed by the author regarding the importance of customizing farm machinery to specific regions and crops. Option A says a pharmaceutical company tailoring its medical equipment to the unique needs of different hospitals. Yeah, so now this isn't a perfect application of the principle mentioned in the passage. Okay, so now this question in my opinion was slightly tricky and also slightly vague in the sense that it doesn't give you a perfect it doesn't give you perfect metrics to go by and to properly apply what principles that the passage has mentioned, because the principles in the passage mentioned, that is customization with regards to specific regions and crops, aren't really addressed in the options. So it makes it slightly more difficult to choose. So I think you can eliminate option A and option C slightly easily, in which option C says a tech company designing personalized software solutions for different business sectors. Where they're talking about sectors as a whole. And it doesn't come as close to the example or the principle that is provided in the passage. In my opinion, that the real difficulty comes here between option B and D, where B says an automobile manufacturer producing vehicles suited to varying terrain and climatic conditions, where D says a construction firm designing buildings based on the local weather and geographical conditions. Now, these are very close in my opinion, and the answer key says B. So this is again one of those questions where you eliminate two and then go for the other two options. Just go with your gut and go with what feels right. Yeah, I think that's about it with regards to this question. It's slightly vague. It's a tricky question. With and because it's that way, there isn't any set form of elimination that you can go by for the other two options that are remaining. Uh, with option 12, with question 12, which of the following arguments is structured most similarly to the author's argument about the need for technological transfer mechanisms and intellectual property frameworks to encourage knowledge dissemination? Now, this is one of those rare questions where there is a very direct, clear right answer. Where even if you go by elimination, you will easily arrive at the answer. But if you look at the passage, the part that talks about what is addressed in the question talks about fostering of research and coming together and just a sense of collaboration in general. While the only option that addresses that is option D, where they talk about fostering research collaborations. And that is exactly what even the passage says, where in which paragraph is this one? I think in the third paragraph, in the first line. In order to foster, wait, I'll show you. Here. In order to foster a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, it is imperative to establish incubation cells and technoparks, where aspiring entrepreneurs, researchers can collaborate, exchange ideas, and translate innovative concepts into practical solutions. Here, option A talks about providing infrastructure. Option B talks about enhancing productivity in offices and investment. Option C talks about implementing green policies. None of these talk about collaborative efforts and research, which is why option D is very clearly your right answer. Question 13 is again a slightly tough one, where the question says the author mentions the importance of establishing incubation cells and technoparks for innovation and entrepreneurships. Entrepreneurship in the farm machinery sector. However, one might wonder how these cells and parks can thrive in an industry often characterized by solved technological advancement. Which of the following, if true, would best resolve this apparent paradox? Option A says that the technoparks are funded by a combination of private and public sectors, ensuring a steady flow of resources for innovation. Option B says there are international collaborations in place that help in technology transfer and knowledge exchange. I think you can eliminate option B because it doesn't really international collaborations in place that help in technology transfer. The international part of it is the problem here. It doesn't really address what the question says or what is there in the passage. That's why I think you can eliminate option B. Option C says the government provides tax benefits to the technoparks and incubation cells in the farm machinery industry. This again doesn't really give us a proper picture of how it would help in overcoming the slow technological advancement, right? So I think this is another one that you can eliminate. Option D says the local farmers are often eager to try new technologies and are open to collaboration with these technoparks. Now, the thing is, here they're talking in the question talks about slow technological advancement. It doesn't really talk about how this technological advancement will be adapted and pretty much executed by the farmers. That is the next step, which is not what the question addresses. The question talks about the technological advancement in itself and how that is being delayed and slowed down for some reason. And now the option that comes closest is option A, because it is the only option that addresses that directly, about kind of trying to ease up this slow technological advancement and trying to hasten that process and make it more smooth and quicker, because ensuring a steady flow of resources would ideally lead to that, right? While you can very easily eliminate option B and C, and D is the next step about executing these technological advancements and adapting them to actual farm life. So which is why A is the answer here. A isn't the best option, but like I said, it is the least strong option. It's the one that tackles the question most directly. Question 14 is, what is the role of the statement by leveraging cutting edge technologies like Internet of Things, data and analytics and automation? Farmers can make informed decisions, optimize resource allocation, and maximize yields while minimizing environmental impact in the author's argument. Yeah, so the question is basically asking what is the role of that statement in the broader context of the passage. Now, option A says it serves as a main conclusion, drawing together multiple threads of the argument. This is very clearly wrong, because it isn't the main conclusion. It is just a another solution that the author gives. So this is a very high standard which option A requires, and the statement itself does not meet that. Option B says it is an intermediate conclusion, providing a basis for further argument. This is the closest option in my opinion, because all of these solutions are intermediate conclusions and then suggestions that the author is giving. Aditya, just 1 second. We'll finish off all the questions and then we'll address this. Okay. Yeah. So this is an intermediate conclusion, which is in my opinion the closest answer. Option C says it provides evidence in support of an earlier claim. There is no earlier claim made about leveraging cutting edge technologies and stuff like that. Yeah, and this isn't evidence in general, because this is more of a solution, and evidence would be slightly different in its nature and in its characteristics. Option D says it introduces a new line of reasoning that the author will develop later in the passage. Specifically, Internet of Things, data analytics, and optimization of resource allocation, maximizing yields are not things that the author stresses on later on in the passage. He moves on to other more important things. So, which is why I think you can eliminate option B also. Option B is, in my opinion, the direct answer here. Moving to question 15, which is the last question we'll be doing for today. I'll take some questions after
Sorry
that.
to interrupt you.
Yes.
Can you scroll up?
Scroll up.
Can,
Yes.
can you
yes,
just
1 second.
scroll up the question?
Yeah, sure. So question 14 deals with that, where I'll just repeat question 14 very quickly. Okay. It serves as a main conclusion. Drawing together multiple threads of argument can be eliminated simply because it isn't the main conclusion, and it is just a part of the other solutions that the author gives. Option C can be eliminated because this isn't an earlier claim made by the author, and it is also the sentence given here isn't in the nature of how evidence is usually portrayed in a passage. It is more a solution and a suggestion. Option D is introduces a new line of reasoning that the author will develop later in the passage. The author doesn't specify or go into details about this specific sentence. Later in the passage, he moves on to other things, right? That's why option B is the best option here. Question 15, which is the last question we'll be doing for today. What is the primary method by which the author constructs the argument? I'll come to option A in the end. Option B says the author uses empirical evidence to support a preconceived notion. There is no preconceived notion when he comes into the passage, if you notice. So this is not the method that the author uses. It can be eliminated. Option C is that the author critiques a prevailing theory, then offers an alternative. Again, here doesn't come in with any set theory, and he gives many solutions which may not necessarily be alternatives to each other, but something that can complement and supplement each other, right? Which is why this option also doesn't make sense. The option D says the author draws a conclusion based on a series of factual observations. Now, these can't entirely be termed as factual observations because these are solutions and suggestions. And the author doesn't draw a main conclusion that stems from these solutions or suggestions that he gives. And thus the closest option is option A, where the author presents a problem and offers potential solutions for it. The entire passage is the author suggesting and giving potential solutions for the main problem that he outlines in the start. That is the entire. He talks about environmental problems, diversification, and the first 4 words itself is amidst the challenges faced. So he doesn't necessarily have to outline exactly what the problem is, but he presents the fact that there is a problem and he offers multiple potential solutions for it. So that's why option A makes the most sense. We won't be going through any more questions today. That is it for today. I hope it gave you a proper understanding as to how to approach the process of elimination properly, and understanding how you can build your own process, your own system with more practice. Now, today was an insight into how I eliminate and basically the system I use through my prep and in the CLAT exam itself. Although the logical section was slightly easy for our paper, it really helped me in the exam by making the most of that slightly easy section. So yeah, that is really important, especially if logic turns out to be slightly easy, where elimination will play a key role in terms of eliminating all your silly mistakes. So logic is one section where you need to sit and focus and read every word carefully, try to dissect the meanings, not assume things, and be very careful of the biases in your head. Stick exactly to what the passage is saying, and then apply your and then apply your system of elimination, or arriving at the right answer to it. I think that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to stop screen sharing. I will just address a couple of questions if they have, if if you all have mentioned them. Firstly, if anyone has any questions, can you please raise your hand? Okay, so no direct questions. I think someone had given a question in the start with regards to schooling in the Hindi medium. I get that that can be really difficult. Okay, yeah. So firstly, with regards to schooling in Hindi medium, I get that that can be really difficult. CLAT is slightly unfair in that sense, where it focuses mainly on English. But to be brutally honest, the only way to get through that is to just sit and properly practice. Read as much as you can. This doesn't just apply to GK or a newspaper or anything else in general. Just any general reading in English will help you a lot in terms of a command over the language. So at this point, I think that's one thing that can surely help you. Where to practice these types of critical questions. So if you aren't enrolled in centers already, then I'm pretty sure. Wait, hold up. Yeah, so there are a lot of websites in general that give these type of material. Most aspirants will, most people who have cracked will always guide you towards things like GMAT Club and just general LSAT questions. GMAT Club can be very helpful. I know a lot of people who have cracked it, who have improved a lot in both logic and English by practicing GMAT Club questions and doing other LSAT questions. So GMAT Club is a website, I think, that should help you. And just the LSAT, the old LSAT papers are always available to you. So you can use those to pretty much get your material from and actually make a difference there. The quality of those questions are generally much higher. So it is also slightly more difficult. So don't take it in a bad way if you aren't able to do great in that. But practicing those questions will really help you and help you increase your score, reading speed, and just your overall attempts and accuracy. Someone asked how to increase accuracy in LR. Honestly, I would say that because the pattern has changed and there are 30 less questions, there is a very high probability that a lot of questions would have been cut from LR. So properly, I think you should give yourself a little more time to read the passage and then focus on the questions themselves. In English, you can choose to actually go through the questions a little faster, while here each option will present its own challenge in critical reasoning. So give yourself that little more time in your options and rethink, try to focus and think very, very deeply, and also read every word without fail, because a lot of silly mistakes and in terms of those is missing a knot or missing an undermine or things like that. These are mistakes that I've also made to a great extent. So this can help you increase your accuracy. How can we manage current affairs with other subjects practice? Okay, so other subjects practice after a certain point, you don't have to do that much for other subjects. I'd suggest current affairs is something you have to do every day because it's something that just builds your practice and everything else. And I'd suggest what I used to do was do current affairs and then do a couple other subjects. Don't try to do all subjects on the same day or all sections on the practice on the same day. Do current affairs and pick and choose some others. How do you understand the pattern of argument made by the author and reach at the main conclusion? We usually get stuck in intermediary conclusions in passages with multiple opinions. Okay, so you're talking about the distinction between your main conclusion of the main point and your other subsidiary points. So how to identify this is number one. So all of your other subsidiary points would in the end lead to a main point. I'm not talking about this chronologically. So it may not be that all your subsidiary or all your intermediary conclusions will be along the passage and your main conclusion will be in the end. That may not always be the case. What you need to focus on is that your intermediary conclusions and the other arguments that the author is making logically guide you towards something that is vast, that is slightly more bigger. So your main conclusion, in theory and ideally, would encompass all your other intermediary conclusions. So the basic argument of your main conclusion could be applied to all your other intermediary conclusions too. Understood? So all your intermediary conclusions would ideally lead to your main conclusion, and your main conclusion would encompass all these other things that the author addresses. So you don't go about it chronologically. If you look at it, that the last passage may have your main conclusion, or the first few lines may have your main conclusion, you may end up going wrong with it. So try to keep an open mind in that sense. Do you have any tips to balance boards with CLAT prep? Honestly, I don't. It depends on the stream you have. It is very relative to your own situation and scenario, how much focus you want to give to CLAT as compared to your boards. But the best help I can give you is tell you what I did, and you can take as much as you can from that. Where I completely gave the first 6 months of the academic year to my CLAT prep, and then kept my boards for later, from January to Feb, which is when I prep for boards. I could afford to do that because I was in the commerce stream and I didn't have math. So you have to assess your priorities and figure out how to do it. But one thing I'd suggest is, if you're doing CLAT very seriously and actually are prepping for it on a daily basis, at no point, even during your exams, at no point completely lose touch. So don't go 3-4 days without doing anything related to CLAT at all. Always do something related to CLAT in a day, because it will keep you in touch. It will keep you in that in the motion of preparation. Because once you go out of it, then it's very difficult to come back and set a routine again and again. What would you suggest for reading and improving RC? I think I already addressed this. Your GMAT club and your LSAT questions are very helpful. And general English reading will help you get a command over the language, and increase reading speed, increase comprehension of what you are reading, which will make it even much easier later on. I think those are all the questions for today. Anish, if you're here, I'm pretty sure I'm done. Just give me 1 second, guys. Guys, just give me 1 second. Okay, guys, thanks for attending today. This was a great session. I hope to be here again and help you out in any capacity that I can. And NLT will always be doing that. So yeah, please attend the other sessions. Other people will be able to help you a lot too. And gaining different perspectives is very helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for attending. And yeah, see you guys.